You know, I think I can get to know everybody. Great. So for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Larry Cohen. I'm Vice President of Trident Mortgage, Regional Manager for Center City. And I'm one of the people who helped put this together with the other Trident reps, which I would like to introduce. So Jason and Kevin over here. Sean in the back. Kim, where's Kim? I don't see Kim. Kim. And Chris Smith. Where's Chris? Chris right in the back. He's actually working at the Hill office, which I know some of us consider the suburbs, but it's actually still part of Philadelphia. So I tried to get Roy Halliday, Cliff Lee, Paul Hamels, and Roy Oswald today, but they didn't find my invitation. But I got the kings of appraisers here today, in total king, right, Jay?
Yes.
And Jay Miller, Craig Silverman, Bob Yizzy, and Ed Myers. These guys are the only people that will appraise a Center City property for Trident Mortgage. They are on our rotation. We cannot dictate who gets the appraisal, but these are the 4 people that are on our rotation. And one of the reasons for having this is because, you know, every day I hear about appraisals. I hear so-and-so went to X mortgage company, and someone from Lancaster is driving in to appraise my property on Pine Street, and they don't understand the word historic, they don't understand the word condo, they don't understand where there's 450 square foot properties in Philadelphia, they don't understand that there's a kitchen in the basement. So, you know, you are our business partners, and we value that on a daily basis. And one of the reasons that we did this and made sure our rotation was done properly, and by the law, is to have these 4 guys, and each guy here, standing in front of you, has at least 20 years experience in the city of Philadelphia. You know, I've been working with, I guess, Jay and Craig since the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jay gets to answer every day.
He does look good.
So we call this meeting, and everybody's asked a lot of questions. So I have a list of questions that people asked, and then we're going to have a microphone that's going around for people that want to ask questions to the appraisers and understand what's going on in the city, you know, where we were a few years ago as far as appraisals are concerned, where we are now, where we were in between, and then there's some regulations that are coming that you guys aren't even aware about that's just going to hamper our lives even more. Okay. So we've gone through a lot of changes in the last few years on the loan officer side, on the real estate side, on every side, but we're all here, and some people might consider us as survivors, but I consider us as winners. So I would like to applaud all of you here. They live in Washington, they don't understand what we do on a daily basis, but we continue to adhere to and change and win. So again, congratulations to everybody here. So to get started, first I'd like to introduce 2 other important people in this room. So Marie Gallo is in the back. She's Senior VP of Operations for Trident Mortgage. And Irene Schull, she is Head of Underwriting. So I don't know where Irene, she's on the phone. So she's already solving a problem to get somebody to the closing, because these 2 ladies are the backbone of what we do on a daily basis. They help each one of us solve problems, get to the closing, when there are issues. They are the force behind us. That's why I had them here today. So it's not unusual for Irene to be on the phone, because she's probably getting a phone call saying, hey, we need to get somebody to the table. So we have Ginny and Joanne here, and I'd like to see if they'd like to say a few words before we get started. Where's Ginny?
Over here. Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm beside myself about this, and those of you who have been talking to me over the last few days have heard this many times. I believe bring these gentlemen here in front of you to talk about something that's so absolutely crucial. And I thank Trident for the effort that they've made to put this together, and I think it's a fabulous, fabulous thing, and I know you're all going to benefit from it. And from the Prudential point of view, I think it's just another example of what we're trying to do to help all of you be the best that you can be. And thank you. Thank you.
Joanne?
I just wanted to say, the theme of what I want to say is what Trident means to me. And it will take 2 minutes, but I had a multiple bid situation on a house recently, and Randy Dobin was one of the, I don't know if Randy's here. Hi, Rand. And she was one of the people that came in. Randy knows that I said to her, would your buyer change to Trident? And she had really pushed for Trident, but it was one of those, but my best friend is, or my friend is, right, Rand? And that, it was so important to me, and I convinced, and also my seller who had previously used Trident, how important that was today more than ever to have a person, your buyers, using Trident, because I knew that my appraisal had a fair shot at being accurate and correct. On the other hand, I had another situation recently where I sold something at Bancroft Green, Jeffrey's listing, and the buyer had a mom who was in the business somewhere in New Jersey, and they insisted on using their bank. That was, and I did everything I could. Larry spoke to them. They gave a better rate, Trident and everything, but they went with their bank. That was supposed to have settled last Tuesday. It wound up being, and there were two other Bancroft Greens that were being settled at the same time, had no issues. They sent an appraiser from Delaware County who put up like Delaware County kind of applications to this, and none of them worked. We wound up at the settlement table. It was an all-day thing on Tuesday. The funds were finally dispersed on Friday, and the guy actually, he apologized, his mother apologized, and he said, I'm just embarrassed. And before that, he kept saying, sure, you want me to use Trident because it's your company. But I think these kind of stories, that's what Trident means to all of us. So thank you for coming. Enjoy and turn off your cell phones.
Right, so iPads off, cell phones, no one has a beeper anymore, so. Just some quick rules. We have some questions that we got through email that we're gonna, ask the appraisers, and then we're gonna pass around a microphone for other people that have questions. Just no questions on specific properties, because they're not gonna remember or know, and it's just not fair to everybody else. So just nothing on specific, or nothing about, hey, you did an appraisal for me 5 years ago, what happened then type of situation. So just where we are now, and then where we are going, and situations that we've all been hampered by. And I use the word hampered in the invitation because we've all been hampered by appraisals. No fault to these guys, but just fault to the way the market is because of short sales foreclosures and other situations that have happened, or not aware of a listing, or an agent not from Prudential, or not from people who know Center City, maybe somebody else who took a listing and has no idea how to price a property. And then all of a sudden, there's an appraisal issue. And you call them for comps, and they have no comps. So that's the main reason, another main reason that we have these four guys here. So I'm going to get Craig actually to start, because I want him to talk about where we were a few years ago, where we went to, and where we are now, and then just talk briefly about where we might be going.
Hey, Larry. So hey, just real quick, if anybody doesn't have a pamphlet on kind of the who's who and some note taking, just raise your hand. I'll come around and make sure you have one.
So Craig Silverman. Oh, you guys speak up.
First, thanks for inviting us here, and this means a lot to all of us to be recognized.
You need a microphone?
You can hear me? I'll try and speak up. Can everybody hear me now? Yeah?
Yes.
Hello? So thank you very much for this. Larry had asked me to give some background on the appraisal profession and kind of give you a history of where we came from and where we are now. And I was debating how far back to actually go in my dissertation.
Yeah, just a few years, please.
Well, if I could just briefly, we had a banking crisis years ago. And as a result of that banking crisis, Congress passed the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act. And out of that act, Title 11 of that act, mandated to the states that they have licensing and certification for appraisers, for anybody creating or doing evaluation for a federally regulated transaction. So around 92 or so, we started to have the first licensing. Prior to that, you had to be a broker to be an appraiser. So fast forward to the last decade, and we all know what happened in the real estate market. And it was a wonderful time for all of us in this room. We were all doing very, very well. Around 2008, around August of 2008, a major jumbo lender, and I was trying to find some information on the jumbo lender, went bankrupt. Do you recall that there were a couple major jumbo lenders?
Washington Mutual.
Well, that one to get to Washington Mutual in a second. But there was a major jumbo lender that went bankrupt in August of that year. And in September of that year, you had the market crash. And 2 months later, a bill came out. It was called the Home Valuation Code of Conduct. The Home Valuation Code of Conduct was an agreement between the New York State Attorney General, Andrew Cuomo, now the governor, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And it came about as a result of an investigation that Cuomo was doing into Washington Mutual. Washington Mutual had an appraisal management company. You may be familiar with this term now. It's much more common now. But they had an appraisal management company called Appraisal. And they were finding that Appraisal was putting pressure on appraisers to make values. And those properties that were being appraised were then given to Washington Mutual, and Washington Mutual was then selling those loans to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So in the course of this investigation, Cuomo decided to look into Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, since they were the end buyers of these loans, and pressured them into an agreement called the Home Valuation Code of Conduct. What that did was it created a barrier for any loan that being sold to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It created a barrier of the ordering process of appraisal. So whereas traditionally I built my business with people like Larry Cohen and Jason Greiser, soliciting business, but I was no longer allowed to speak to them. But there were a lot of misconceptions about the rule. Most notably, that realtors were not allowed to speak to appraisers. The truth of the matter is that the HVCC actually didn't apply to me as the appraiser. It didn't apply to the realtor. It actually only applied to the mortgage origination staff. There had to be anybody who was originating mortgages, anybody who was making their money from the closing of a loan, could not have anything to do with the appraiser, contacting the appraiser, ordering the appraisal. Now the rules changed a little bit, but HVCC is actually no longer in effect, because as of last Friday, a new bill, the Dodd-Frank bill in section 1472, I believe, of the Dodd-Frank bill, now takes over where HVC left off. The rules are basically the same, but I guess the important thing to note here is how it affects the realtor. The realtors can speak to the appraisers. I want to speak to a realtor. I want to find out about a transaction. I want to be able to have a conversation about different transactions, the issues that you're having, properties, comparables that you're looking at in order to set a price. We can have that conversation, and it's important that you know that. The new rules only apply to the actual mortgage origination, and there's a lot of changes that have happened because of that. But basically, that's where we are right now. That's where we stand right now as far as the appraisals, dealing with the mortgage people and dealing with the realtors.
Right. So Irene's back in the room. So I'd like you to meet Irene. She's head of underwriting for us, and she's one of the most important people in my life. Because this is my second wife, so she's probably my third wife. So, you know, Irene, I'm not going to ask her to come up here or anything like that, but she can tell you that we run through a system called Mercury, right? And it's just a random process where these appraisers are picked. So, like I said before, because of HCC or the change in Dodd-Franco, that we just go through a system. So, just, you know, order comes in, and then it might just shoot to Jay, and then an order comes in, it'll go to Craig, an order goes to Ed, and then to Bob, and the cycle starts over again. The only way it might change is if one of the four are not approved by a particular investor or a loan's going to, then it might skip that person and go to the next person. But one thing that Craig said that was very important was, you as a realtor have the right to speak to these appraisers. They want to speak to you. They want to help solve the problems. You might have information that they're not aware of. I mean, especially in the city, Alan Dom, one of the biggest realtors in the city, is not part of MLS. Nothing shows up in the computer, so if all four have relationships there, they can call and get information. So it's really important to know that you can speak to them. We're not allowed to speak to them about value, but you are. The other person I forgot to introduce is Iva. Iva has probably been in a lot of your properties, and she works directly with Jay. She's an integral part to what we do, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Iva was here. And we thank Iva for everything that she's done. So the other main question I wanted to ask everybody, or ask the appraisers, so you get an order from Trident, it comes through Mercury, you accept the order. So Jay, what happens, what do you do as soon as you get that order? Like, I imagine it's not a blind, you go to the property and say, hey, what happens? I imagine you go through a process.
Oh, we received the order, and first thing we do is my secretary, who many of you will speak to it if you have to call me back, he's Joe, will either ask me who's going to do it. It's either myself or I. It's not like we have a huge amount of decisions to make. And then we determine if it's a sale or a refinance, which we do both. And I'm just speaking generally to Mercury Network, which is what Trident uses. So what happens is then we look at the property. We usually contact the person, whether it be the listing agent, sometimes on a FISBO, it could be an attorney, it could be whoever. And then we set up an appointment and we go in and we look at the property. One of the things that I know that most of us do is, and that Larry just brought up, is we do talk to the realtor. I mean, the thing is, you don't always get a chance to talk to the realtor direct. Sometimes, you know, and a lot of times realtors will come out and meet me. Lately, people have said to me a couple times, well, I want to see you. I know you're all right, but I want to see you. Well, that's a different story. I don't mind. And it's not a bad idea. Like, you know, people go, well, do you want my comps? We should never turn away the comps. So we take the comps, and we also do our own research. Usually it's an area that we've known, like in Center City, that we've probably done something either on that block or within walking distance, like 20 or 50 feet. And then we go back, we do the research involved, and sometimes we do it before. Matters how our time frame is. And then we look at what the data is, and we come up with do the appraisal, which is the mechanics of doing appraisals. And we determine what the value should be, or our opinion of value. It's not always the opinion of value that may match the sale price, for a lot of reasons. That's why when we do talk to the realtor, we'd like to have them, like, well, I'd like to see where their thought process is in determining what the value is. The other factor is that when we do see you and talk to you, you have seen a lot more properties than we have. Because you have these, you know, the showcases where you guys go around to different properties, so you see them. Many times a realtor will say to me, well, that property, the carpet wasn't as nice. Well, if you guys ever look on the MLS or Trend, and you look at the interior pictures, they're all professionally taken. So, you know, it's like they light them and the whole bit, so it looks really good. You can't always tell the condition of the floor. I mean, there could be a hole. But, you know, you look at this carpet, it's different from there to there. So that's it. And then we come up, and usually I will call a realtor and say, listen, I'm having an issue. And if you, I always say the line, and I've probably have heard me say, if you don't hear from me, it's pretty good. So that's basically the process.
So let's say there is an issue, and Irene, I'm sorry for bringing you into this a little bit. So let's say there is an issue, because there's definitely been issues. Then we have a right, I believe, to contest that value, and we need to contact the realtor and get comparatives or other comparables that you might have used to value that property, and then we take it to our underwriting staff, which is mainly will be Irene and somebody else in our office that will handle, I guess, contentions or a value on that appraisal. And then, so if Irene, if you can just take us through that process a little bit. I don't want to go into total detail, but you have to understand. So as Trident and as your business partner, we will, if we have the comparables and we feel there might be an issue with an appraisal, we will go to the step of contesting that value. I mean, we really want to make sure that the value is proper, and there's plenty of times where they, you know, guys are the king of what we consider appraisers, but there's a few times where everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, and there may be something missed or something that you're not aware of that you don't know about that really could change the value, or something that's about to be sold that could change the value that you wouldn't have no idea about. So, so Irene, if you can just go into that for a few seconds.
All right, so I left my pitchfork home because I'm normally the one that stands between you and your closing when we have a valuation situation. We take the HVCC part of this very much to heart, because Trident Mortgage is responsible to your loan on the secondary market, and which means we're responsible for the collateral evaluation on the secondary market. And I am in a position of having to Monday morning quarterback whether the value is valid, whether it can be supported, and whether it is a good risk on behalf of the company. And in years long ago, we had some wiggle room. If we had a very well qualified borrower, high FICO scores and assets, and we had a good down payment on a loan, chances are we could base our overall file risk on the credit and the assets and the income of the borrower. And if we were a little weak in the collateral area, it wasn't such a big deal. But it is a big deal now. And even the most well-qualified borrowers with big down payments and high FICO scores, when it gets to the investor level, if they don't like the way we did the collateral, we're simply asked to just, no, it's a non-purchase, sell it to somebody else, and move on. So we're always in a position of, you know, we have a core group of appraisers, we have a lot of trust in these folks, we have good communication ability with this staff, so that if it does escalate to me or to one of my staff, we're going to fight the fight. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to try and take your comps. We're going to try and have a discussion. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to make loans that I know we can sell. And they also have homework after closing. If this loan gets to the secondary market and an investor questions their work, and they do, they run independent third-party validations. They do field reviews. They do desk reviews. And then these guys have to go back and support the value they gave us so that I can get that loan sold. So there's that ebb and flow that has to work between the operations, the appraisers, and the agents. And when you guys do work with the appraisers, it means there's kind of less that I have to get involved with, because if you guys can come to your own conclusions outside of the mortgage origination staff, then that makes the process work a little better for me. But ultimately, the process is that if there is a value consideration, we ask that the comps come in, they get reviewed by an underwriter, they get provided to the appraiser, we have some discussion, because if value is going to change, we want to make sure that if value's changed, it can be supported, and I can go out there and sell that loan. So the collateral is, especially in our marketplace, declining markets all over the place across the country, the investors are just, Fannie and Freddie are just really out there in value consideration, and we're now trying to just put that into our collateral credit risk and make sure that whatever we decide and wherever we go, they can support what they do, because if we have enough situations where they can't support what they do, they can't work as our approved vendors anymore. And that's kind of the line that we ride in determining who is this core group we're going to work with and how we're going to move forward as partners together to get your loans to the table. Is that kind
Yeah,
of?
I mean, so that's one of the reasons that I go into the sales meetings in the Rittenhouse Square office, and the other guys go into the sales meetings in their office. And if it's your listing, please meet the appraiser with the comparables that you use to come up with the price. You know, they can look in the same computers, but there's some situations where they don't know. If you meet them, I just find more times than not, when you meet them with the information, I'm not getting a phone call saying, you know, or I'm not calling Irene and saying, hey, I think there's an appraisal issue, we need to figure something out. So just please, and just meet them. Just, I mean, I don't know how long you guys are in the property for.
It's not as important they meet us, it's more as important thing is just give us the documentation. As far as email,
Right,
comps,
right.
I mean, that's a quick, easy process to do
Okay.
it.
Well, either way.
It's not as important, it's just
Right.
important we get the information. The schedules are so challenged, especially in the city as far as getting around doing inspections, traffic, parking. Timing is not always perfect, and not to inconvenience the agents, they can do more with their time as far as not running around meeting appraisals. I find it easier just to have them email me information, and if there is concerns or questions, I always advise them, I always get back to them before submitting the report.
I just assume that they all love meeting and talking to you guys.
I just find it just becomes more challenging. You end up running behind or ahead of schedule,
Right.
and then you got to make more phone calls. I just find to have them email you the information, and you can respond to them as far as through the email trail too, as far as paper trail.
Right, so just give me the information.
If I could just ask another question, how often do you receive a phone call from an appraiser regarding a pending sale, where they want to, they're asking what's the contract price is and so on and so on? It's really important to us, especially in this climate, in this market, that we're dealing in, that we use pending sales. Pending sales sometimes can help us to really, you know, support the final value. You know, we see a pending sale, it just has the list price what it was in trend. If we can get that information when we call, what the contract price is, it's not, you know, not your deal, or the appraisal is not your deal, but you are helping us out, and it can help you out going forward with another deal potentially down the road.
To add to that, I know there's sometimes confidentiality issues with releasing what a sale price is, especially on a pending sale. And I mean, if you know who the appraiser is, obviously you feel more at home. And there's people, most people in this office know, I mean, in this room, know all of us and have no problem telling us. The other thing that I've seen a lot of agents do, which I find is really helpful, and you know, if you read the MLS and you look at the pictures, like I said before, it's not always that good of a, you know, look, it's a sales device. But I have a lot of realtors, when I meet them, they'll write little notes on the MLS pit, you know, like this did, you know, backed up. And the thing is, it's good that all of a sudden, not that you're always going to take that as, you know, the gospel, you may say to yourself, let me take that a little further. Maybe I should call the listing agent to find out what kind of condition that, you know, really, and maybe press them on it to find out, you know, how dated the property was, because maybe that is the reason why this looks like a great comp, but if it needs $60,000 in upgrades, maybe it's not.
And just coming back to Irene's point, just real, a field review, just as an FYI, the reason we don't want to get to that stage is a field review essentially is an opinion of an opinion at that point, right? So these guys are giving their expert opinion of value on that property. A field review is something that comes into question that we want to be extra safe on, and then that third-party investor is going out to somebody on their staff and saying, hey, look at this appraisal, give us your opinion on their opinion. So you can see how that, we don't like that, right? The more opinions you get, what's likely to happen. You know, you're going to have, you know, all kinds of things flying all over the place. We just don't want to get to that stage.
You're asking, like when you're having the field reviews done, Jason, you're actually asking someone to critique or criticize, or basically looking for criticism. They're looking for any mistakes on that
Right.
appraisal. They want to highlight it. So you just,
Right.
just causes more aggravation, more.
So just an
trouble.
FYI what
So
that is.
That's what they're trained to do. They're trained to find mistakes or make something out of an appraisal that really isn't, you know.
Right, somebody that hasn't physically been to the property, somebody that may not even be from this area, somebody that may be in a corporate office somewhere in the middle of America. So you can imagine why we don't want to get to that stage.
It's like a desk review, so they
Right.
really don't know the market. They're just going
Well,
to-
again, a field review, they don't actually go into the property.
Right.
They drive
Drive by.
to the house, but they don't have the benefit of going through the property and seeing.
Exactly.
And just if I can piggyback on that from an underwriting perspective, I've been in the business for probably 30 years, and way back when, you used to be able, as an underwriter, both for the direct endorsement FHA program and conventionally, an underwriter could review an appraisal and make their own determination based on everything I see